This one is from the AITA subreddit as well and is titled, Am I the Astronaut for telling my mom we don't view her eldest as our brother and she needs to stop forcing him on us? All right, here we go. I, 28 male, am the youngest of 3, though if you ask my mother, she'd say 4. Prior to my eldest brother Christopher's birth, my parents had another baby that was stillborn. His name was James. My parents consistently talked about him. He was included in family portraits where one of us held the only picture we have of him, Christmas cards, etc. He was mentioned at every single big event. My brothers and I have tried to tell our parents that we are uncomfortable with the picture and it's morbid to us, as well as we don't want it included all the time. My mom always insists and tells us that James is family. She also gets upset if I refer to Christopher as my eldest brother or if one of us says that we have 2 brothers. We've tried to explain that we were born after James and don't have the attachment she does. This has led to several arguments, and usually it isn't worth it. So we just give in and say, fine. She can bring the photo and talk about James there. Christopher is getting married. After talking with his fiancée, Lily, they both said the picture cannot come. They said they'll include James in the program alongside Lily's grandmother, who passed as a sort of guest we are thinking about on this special day, but there will be no detailed essay that our mom usually includes on the holiday cards to memorialize James. She got very upset by both things and called them insensitive. They are sticking to their guns. My mom was venting to me, and I told her I agreed with Christopher and Lily. I said that James isn't here. We have no connection to him, and she can't keep shoehorning him in. You know how many people are probably too young to know what a shoehorn is? That needs to be a test. That needs to be a piece of content. Let's figure out how many young people know what the heck a shoehorn is. She can't expect us to make everything about him. That obviously she won't be over James's death, but it's time to stop making him front and center. I also added that none of us view James as our brother. She began to cry and left. My dad is angry with me beyond belief, as are some of our other family members. My brothers are on my side, but I need some unbiased perspective. Am I the astronaut? Before we get into some of the top comments here, top comment here is NTA. Your parents needed therapy to deal with this about 30 years ago. Of course, losing James was very hard to them. A stillbirth is very sad, but this kind of enduring clinging to that is not normal or healthy. If they wanted to do something to remember him on his birthday, okay, maybe, but not at every occasion when none of you siblings ever knew him. Keep sticking up for Christopher and Lily because their wedding is their day and it's supposed to be happy. It does not need an outsized and awkwardly sad reminder of a lost baby. Maybe you and all your brothers need to stage some kind of intervention with your parents after the wedding, perhaps, and talk to them about getting a therapist. You love them and care about their pain, but they can't keep forcing this in every Christmas, every wedding, the eventual births of grandchildren, etc. Another comment here, if I was his fiance, I wouldn't want someone showing people pictures of a dead baby at my wedding. I wouldn't want pictures of a dead baby I have no attachment to in my wedding album. I wouldn't want someone at my wedding carrying on a conversation about dead babies. Why does his mom's huge life event have to be involved in her son's big life event? That's a sign that she's not properly processing the loss and needs professional help. The suggestion of not bringing a picture of a dead baby to someone's wedding wasn't a betrayal. It was just the considerate thing to do. You don't wear white to a wedding. You don't propose to someone at a wedding. And not unless you're the subject of a Reddit story. And you don't impose your trauma on other guests at the wedding. I think that last line is what really seals the deal here. You don't impose your trauma on others. Enforcing your trauma on other people is a no-no, right? This is also really tough. I've never been through this. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way that you're supposed to process this. And I'm also sure that 30 years ago, the way that society said this is how you handle this was way different than it is now. Now, I'm sure there's an immediate trigger where people are encouraged to start in counseling. And maybe 30 years ago, there wasn't. Maybe the cultural view on that or counseling or therapy was I'm sure it was different then. But I'm sure this was very, very tough for them. I can't imagine forcing this on our kids. I can't imagine forcing someone that they, had no connection with. And of course, the memory would still be there. There would still be, a section of the house that was a shrine that never changed. But forcing it to be a part of their life events is, at that point, you have to ask yourself, is that warranted? Is it warranted? I think, if mom here wants to carry around a small picture of James in her purse all the time so that that can be symbolically bringing James with her to all these events, that's a her thing. And that's the difference, is this is a her thing. I think dad, I don't know this, but I get the inkling that dad is for whatever upsets her the least, which we see a lot of spouses do. This is her thing, it feels like. And she needs to figure out a way that she can be okay with this without forcing it on other people. And that's kind of a general rule for life, right? Like how do you process this and how do you deal with this without outwardly affecting everyone around you all the time? You've got to find a way. It's been 30 years. There's got to be a way that doesn't make your children, what's the word I'm looking for? Resent you. There's got to be a way to process this and to deal with this and to cope with this on a daily basis that does not make your kids resent you. There you go. Candy Thunder here says, the grief never leaves, but you cannot let it define your life. And OP has. Beyond that, OP is letting it define the lives of her children. And at what point do you go, wow, maybe that's too far? Probably here. Pain creates change, right? So the amount of pain that she's going through right now because somebody finally stood up and said, no, we're not going to do this. That's the pain that maybe it's going to take to be able to change things. But it's been 30 years. You know, how long is it going to take to break a habit that has been in place for 30 years? It's going to take some time and maybe some understanding on the kid's part here to say, okay, like we get it. It's going to take some time for you to phase out of that, but let's start the process. It's time. It is time. Respecting her and her grief is one thing. When people are forcing their trauma on others outwardly, that's when it's a problem. And they have kept their mouths shut for 30 years and finally stood up because a wedding is coming up and said, we're not comfortable with that. And still, her finding a way to deal with it herself. And if she wants to bring the picture with her, cool. Like she needs a way that she can honor what she wants to honor without forcing that on to everyone else. And that's all that's been talking about here. It's not that her grief isn't justified. It's the coping mechanism and forcing others to join in on that coping mechanism that is not warranted. It's her kids, and her kids are going to end up resenting her for it. Not because it's wrong, because she's forcing it onto their lives, and she's forcing something into their lives that makes them uncomfortable. She's got to find a way to deal with this that does not make her children uncomfortable, so they end up resenting her, and then she doesn't have a relationship with them. It will end up costing her relationships with her kids, and I don't think that's what she wants.